Hi, everyone, and welcome to RD on Stage Live. I'm excited to meet with Pete Comperatore or Comperator.
Comparator. We
I'm
won't. We'll keep the E silent.
else.
Although it depends on who you ask in my family, but
And I'm also with Ethan Page and Jessica Andrews. Are you both seniors? Ethan, are you a
Yes.
senior?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so both seniors at Sanderson High School, and we are going to talk about your new devised documentary play, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But Pete, I want to start with you first. At the beginning of the year, you came to my house. We were actually able to be together at some point, at one point, feels like 100 years ago, but we were talking about Ernest and the Pale Moon. You guys were getting ready to go to SCTC and perform this amazing production in Louisville. You did that. And then we came home and everything shut down. So what's happened since? How did you kind of do the proverbial pivot mid last semester and then going into the start of this year?
Yeah, that's it's just so weird to think about that was only a year ago. It feels like 100 years ago. It feels like a different world and a different lifetime since then. Really that whole journey, and it's funny you start from there because that's really where our play begins. Is really at those months, those weeks right before COVID hit, and that life was happening, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And it has been a wild ride trying to both in the aspect of being an educator and a theater artist, like two of I think the industries that have been most affected, I think, by the shutdown, and not only trying to figure out how to be a teacher, but how to teach theater. How to teach the thing that's at its core two human beings being in the same room connecting with each other when you can't be two human beings in the same room connected to each other, has been such a challenge.
So how do you teach? I mean, there are certain subjects I can wrap my head around and really imagine how you would teach them online. How do you teach theater online, though? This isn't like theater, like the history of theater. This is actual theater. How do you teach drama online?
I mean, with my advanced kids, luckily with NCTC and the devising thing, we kind of jumped right into that, and so that's been kind of an easy transition. But Theater One, the beginners, has been a really difficult because I have those are usually my largest classes, and you have kids in there with varieties of interest in theater. Some are really interested in it, some of them just got thrown in there, and they're all starting from scratch, and a lot of them don't have any reference of what theater even is, and so this is their first exposure to theater, and it's like this. So there's been a lot of trial and a whole lot of error trying to figure out like what can we do and how can you do it that's going to be engaging and effective, especially because it's in no way a requirement for anybody to turn on their camera, and like and so that's been a struggle on how to respect that, because I understand the equity issues behind that and why we don't need to make it necessary, but in trying to find and fudge your way around that, and at the same time asking students to take risks, and like when they don't know what's on the other side of the avatar, or they really don't know who they're performing with, and they don't know who they're looking at has become really a challenge. So there's been a lot of trial and error. We've done some individual mime. We've done some radio plays. Now we're working on trying to put together little mini virtual things, little mini virtual skits in groups now that they're a little bit more comfortable. So I've been plugging away, trying to figure it out.
Jessica and Ethan. Jessica, I will start with you. You were at SCTC. You were in the production of Ernest and the Pale Moon. So that's like that's like the Academy Awards, the Tony Awards for high school theater. That's the pinnacle. And so to go from that high and that gala banquet and then come home and have everything shut down. Talk to me about the emotional journey that you've been on since March.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot. It was definitely such a huge high at NCTC to be there with all of my friends and to be recognized in that way for something we had worked so hard on was incredible. But I think something we also discuss in the play is that while I was at this high moment and I was surrounded by people I loved and I was being recognized for my achievements, I was also exhausted. I was absolutely drained. So going into lockdown was hard. I was missing out on so much, but also it was almost like a reprieve because so much had been going on. And at first I was thankful for it because I didn't realize it was going to be so long. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a vacation. I'm going to get some time to like figure my life out. And then it just kept going. And that has led to now where I'm just starting to figure out how to cope with it, how to live with it.
It ebbs and flows. I mean, I have found with everyone I've interviewed, it's kind of ebbed and flowed. How about for you, Ethan? You were at NCTC. Were you in the production as well?
Yes, I was. And I remember at NCTC, it's really odd to think about it now, but I remember in the hotel that we were staying at, there was the news playing in the morning in the breakfast sort of lounge area. And there were stories about COVID, and it was just, it's really weird to think about it now because it's like when you're watching a movie and there's some foreshadowing that you don't realize the first time around, and then you go back and you're like, oh, right, that happened. It's really odd. It's really odd to think about it.
I remember sitting in the lobby of the convention center there in Louisville, and we were all so crowded. I don't know why we were all just in this. I mean, it's a huge convention center, and I felt we were all just on top of each other in this small space. Yeah. And I remember somebody mentioning about this virus, and I was like, oh, whatever. We'll just wash our hands. We'll be fine. I think the only thing I did go to CVS one of the nights and buy some wipes just to like wipe down the hotel room to say I did. Like, I was like, okay, we'll take care of that and we'll be done. But yeah, it's kind of wild that we're here now. A lot of the adults that I've spoken to throughout this pandemic, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, compared this to a grieving process. Jessica and Ethan, I don't know if you've lost people that are close to you, but would you compare this to a grieving process?
I think I would. I personally haven't lost anyone close to me to COVID, but we've lost relationships. We've lost time, and it's talking about in relation to the 5 stages of grief. There was definitely a point of time when I was in denial that it was happening at all, and here we are still going through it. But I'd say it's definitely a grieving process because we have to get through it. We have to heal emotionally and move forward.
I think I agree. I think maybe, admittedly, I'm not very far along in the grieving process. I pretty quickly, I think, realized before the world shut down, I realized, oh, this is going to be very bad. But I didn't even recognize it was going to be this bad. I think sometimes I still feel like I'm in the anger stage because I am... And it's an ongoing joke in the show because all of my lines are just very angry. I feel like though I have an at-risk family member, so I am in constant fear that I'm going to get it, my brother's going to get it, somebody's going to bring it into the house. And I've always considered myself a very responsible teenager, but it really is different to feel like you're holding your parents' life in your hands and to have to regulate your relationships and how you interact with your peers in that way and how to have to sacrifice your senior year of high school. But so much is at stake. So you have to. it's difficult. And I think that's why I'm still in the anger phase, you know?
Well, and I imagine, you know, for my daughter, she graduated in May, and it was a kind of virtual, kind of not, very strange pandemic type graduation, but there was no prom, there was no homecoming dance, all of these kind of rites of passages that you connect with your senior year, that didn't happen. And in her mind, because she's graduated now and she's on the other side of it, she kind of thinks it was worse for that class of kids because they started their senior year in school. They had some of those moments and then it was taken away from them. You guys started virtually. We don't know how long this is going to go on. So is that where some of the anger comes from? That you're missing out on some of these kind of, you know, what I would say, you know, when you're a freshman, you're looking forward to all these senior events. I'm not sure when you're my age or maybe Pete's age that you still look back on those events as fondly as you guys probably think about them. But,
right.
You know, I definitely, there is a loss there. So is that where some of the anger comes from?
I think a little bit for me. I have a prom dress hanging in my closet that I don't expect to wear. I don't think I'll ever get to wear it, which is okay. I'm okay with that. I spent $5 on it. So like, it's not the worst. But I honestly, online school, and I think a lot of kids disagree with me on this. Online school has been very good for me. I'm a very introverted person. It has worked out very well for me. I'm sad that I couldn't do theater in person because it's changed the dynamic so much. But really missing out on that my senior year like that isn't too much of a loss for me. I think it's just I watch the news. I stay up to date with things, and seeing what's happening in the world just makes me angry. And being afraid to go to the grocery store just makes me angry is the big thing.
How about you, Ethan? Are you an introvert too? I find this fascinating. The theater kids are the introverts.
I'd say it varies depending on the mood and depending on the day. I think in terms of my introverted nature, it's been nice being able to just be home and being able to focus on work, not having to, you know, have 5 minutes and to run across campus to get to the next class and then 5 minutes to run right back. But in terms of my more extroverted nature, I really enjoy in class time getting to walk around the class and just interact, you know, just being able to look face to face with someone and, you know, help them out, share a joke, anything like that. And I've really missed that in my life because, you know, now with online schooling and as Mr. C said, we don't have to turn on cameras in class. So a lot of times in my class, I'll be, you know, one of anywhere between 2 and 4 students that turn on their cameras. And it's really bizarre. It leaves that kind of, I really miss that sort of social interaction. I think that's where I've been hit hardest in terms of school related stuff.
I can imagine. One thing that's been very interesting, Pete, as I've done these interviews throughout this pandemic, I'm finding that artists are really embracing the process. Probably, you know, I think as artists, we get caught up in the finished product. You want to get to the finish line and see that finished product. But because of COVID, we've all been kind of forced to reinvent the wheel and reimagine how we create. And because of that, I think a lot of artists are embracing the process. Are you finding that with your students, that they're embracing the process a little bit differently, or?
Yeah, I mean, really, with like, especially with us in this class and in this production, we really, what I was looking at, you know, we took everything we normally do and we turned it all upside down. Like I kind of, I came into them and was like, all right, we're going to do something completely new. Like it was kind of almost like the pressure was off. It's kind of like, hey, we're gonna come and we're gonna do something completely new and completely unique because I wanted to give this group something special that was just for them that no other group got to do. And so what I really took kind of that beginning quarantine was I really studied up on Tectonic Theater Project's moment work. And I took a kind of a virtual moment workshop and how to do this on a camera and virtually. And so that's what, I'd never done that before in my life. I've never studied it. I just kind of was like, all right, we're going to devise a show and I want to do this, for them. So they have this unique experience because they had so much taken away from them that I wanted to be able to provide something that was uniquely theirs. So I kind of studied up on that, and I really did embrace like this is going to be so wide open and so new, and usually, So that's I really embraced that aspect before sort of.
So was there a prompt or anything directive that came down from NCTC saying this is what we want you to put together, or this was kind of up to you guys?
Yes and no. So it happened. It sort of fit together sort of perfectly. So where this idea first came to me was even back before this school year started. It was at the end of last year when it started to become like, all right, this is not going to clear up in a couple months. We're probably going to go into the beginning of the school year, and I have no idea what to expect. It's like, so last year, like a lot of schools, we were in the middle of our musical, and all of a sudden the plug was pulled. And at first the plug was pulled, and it was like, there's 2 weeks. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. So I'm planning with the kids of like, all right, here's what we're going to do to adjust. And then it slowly started not happening. And, people were like, well, couldn't you do it virtually? Can't we do this? And, with royalties and things like that, like we can't, and so there's this sense of disappointment. And even though I knew it wasn't my fault, I just felt like I had let everyone down, that I could not give them this experience. So the last thing I wanted to do was start this new school year with saying, this is what we're going to do, and then have it all taken away. So I had a whole season plan that I immediately scrapped. And then I started thinking about like, what can we do that no matter what happens in the fall, we can do something. So I was like, let's make our own show. Let's devise our own show for NCTC this year. We're going to devise our own show. And then I was like, let's take this time and just process what has been happening to us. And that's what I knew I wanted the theme to be. And I knew I wanted to devise our own work. And then it wasn't until we were about to start the new school year that NCTC said, guess what? We want you to all devise new work. And one of the topics can be COVID. We're like, yes. My plan's already in place. Let's go. So it just happened to work out like that what they asked for was already what I was planning on doing. So yeah, but really NCTC said, here's some, what's cool about that festival is you have some shows that are like ours, which are Zoom and fully virtual, some which are literally films, like they went the full film route. And some of them, they're able to be in some sort of face-to-face. So they have filmed plays on stage, socially distanced with masks. So when you go and look at that festival, you see all three types. You see all different kinds of performances. And because all schools all around the state were all under different rules. So they left it very wide open. And they said, do whatever makes sense for you. We just want you to come and share your work with us.
I love that. Well, and I think to respond to this moment in that way with original work is really exciting to me. So the play is called BREAD and Circuses. Tell me a little bit about it. Is it biographical? Have the students written their own monologues, their own pieces? So
I'll kind of start, and then I'll turn it over to our youngins a little bit. So what wound up happening is, so through moment work, we did so sort of how moment work sort of operates is instead of starting a play with, all right, who are the characters and what's the plot and what's this going to be about, you start with this idea of a hunch of they look at it sort of like almost a theatrical research project. Like, what is it you want to explore theatrically? And so I came to the group with this, with this process of moment work, and with my hunch was, well, how has COVID-19 affected our relationships as young people? And so that's just where we started. And so we just started riffing off that idea. I was asking them, like, all right, go give me a lighting moment. Go give me a gesture that just goes off that theme. And then we just started exploring it from there. And we just started making piles and piles of these little short couple second moments. And then we eventually settled on this kind of being this almost Laramie Project 26 Pebble-ish like biography of them, because we're in the middle of it. It's hard to take something we're in the middle of and try and make it this we're not far enough removed to be able to sort of see it and invent something about it, in my opinion. So I just wanted to give them a voice to be able to tell their stories, and that's all the play is I gave them a series of questions, and they all went home and they interviewed themselves, and they sent their interviews back to me, and we cut them together and we made a play.
Is that your story, Ethan? Is that the version of the story you're sticking to?
Yeah. It's been a very liberating creatively just to have those sorts of questions and being able. It was very therapeutic in a way. Getting able to just sit down, look at a camera, and talk about my own experiences rather than look at a camera and try to answer school questions, because I'm tired of doing that at this point in time. I'd rather just be in the classroom. But being able to talk about what we've gone through, it's been really nice, and getting able to share that with others. It's something that's around. I think that's really special.
How about you, Jessica?
Completely agree with everything said. It's been an awesome experience. I think one of the most beautiful things that art can bring to the world is perspective. And that is everything this play is our perspective of what is happening.
Pete, as you piece the stories together, have you seen any common through lines that might give us some insight into what our young people are experiencing in this moment?
I mean, it was yeah, definitely. And that's what I think from a so, we took it from this micro view of just forget about everything else and tell me about you. Tell me your story, what you're feeling, and taking the pressure off of making this big grandiose story. Just tell me about you. And what's cool about the play is having 25 different young people do that and just tell me about you. And then you stick it all together and you get this macro view of what's sort of going on. And what's definitely sort of going on is like you realize like how smart they are and how much they're paying attention, and how much what we as the adults, we're trying to be, we're supposed to be, in charge of them, how much of what we're doing and what we're not doing is clearly being seen through their eyes, and that they're going to be the ones to really remember this the most and make actionable change from this the most.
What role, I mean, one of the things I love about theater is that I feel like theater and storytelling in this very visceral way helps us navigate difficult topics, difficult issues, historic events. So what role do you feel, I'll start with Pete, and then I want to ask Ethan and Jessica, what role do you feel that theater has in documenting historic events like a pandemic, like a COVID-19, or helping us navigate through this type of event?
I mean, I think it can have this effect of when I have people, when people watch this, I really hope that, especially people their age, I think that I want them to see like, hey, these things that I'm feeling and these things that I'm going through, like I'm not the only one. Like even though we're all sort of locked in our own little isolated world, that what we're missing most is connection. And I think that through this play that I'm hoping to give that sort of connection, that I wanted to first give it with the cast themselves, and then now sharing it outwards and sharing that I'm feeling what you're feeling from across the screen. So yeah, I think that it can really bring the sort of unity, I think, to kind of give that shared experience when we can't have that shared experience.
What do you think, Jessica? I'll start with you and I'll go to Ethan.
Okay. I completely agree. I think we're alone, but we're not alone in this because we're all going through this is definitely something I hope everybody takes from this, as well as we're able to see right now we are recording our mistakes. So let's not do them again. Let's pay attention and let's remind ourselves to be empathetic and to be there for each other and to do what's right and to educate ourselves, that sort of thing. That's what I hope people take away from this and from this play.
Jessica, I am so ready to vote for you for president that, I think you have a future.
That. Everyone can
a future in public office. What do you think?
I suppose in terms of documenting historical events and happenings, it's getting to create something like this in the heat of the moment. It's a snapshot of what's occurring. Like we could, as Mr. C said earlier, we could have, just waited until it was all over and then look back on it, once we've separated ourselves a little bit. But it's nice to be able to look back and realize this is what was happening. This is what we were thinking at that time, and what we've learned from it, how we can move forward. It's good to give us a little bit more of a perspective as to what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, Jessica and Ethan, there are theater companies who have really embraced this virtual realm and jumped in and have created some really interesting virtual productions, virtual experiences? There's other theaters and theater makers who have chosen to sit on the sidelines. They don't want to invest the money or time to figure out the technology, and they are not embracing the virtual realm as much. Do you think because you guys are in this tech savvy generation that you embrace the technology easier than some of us old people who maybe haven't embraced it as quickly? And I'm speaking for myself, Pete, not you, because you're younger than I am.
I don't know. Honestly, I think going into this, which is weird, I wasn't expecting to do a show. I was expecting for us to like drill things, like drill acting techniques the entire semester. So I think it's a little of both. First, I've seen a lot of older people who maybe weren't as tech savvy become very tech savvy through this. But me, I don't even think I considered how we could push the boundaries of theater and how we could make something over this platform. So for me, no, but I don't know for the rest of us.
What do you think, Ethan?
I suppose it's less of I've seen this experience as an opportunity to try performing with a different stage. We've had some projects in previous theater classes where, for a lot of our prior experiences, we've been locked into thinking about that the stage is the stage. We can't go past it. We can't go beyond it. And we've had projects where we are allowed to perform anywhere but the stage. And it gives us a chance to think more creatively. How can we use the space? I feel that this sort of virtual platform gives us a much greater opportunity to explore those kinds of possibilities, explore different mediums. We could, record ourselves performing on stage, or we could try and find out new ways, new possibilities, new abilities that we didn't have previously that we can do online. And I think it's really, it might be easier for people that are more tech savvy at first to grasp, but it's something that I feel that a lot of people can adapt to. People can learn to perform in a new space, explore the possibilities there, and it's kind of exciting getting to see what people create.
Not all. So Pete, I'll turn to you for a second. Not all stage actors are film actors. Some of towards the beginning of this pandemic, when people were experimenting with this virtual realm, there was a lot of overacting. What might look good on stage doesn't necessarily look good on screen, on a small screen. And theater makers generally aren't filmmakers either. So do you think having this experience will make your students, especially those wanting to go into the performing arts, more well-rounded as artists? Because they've had to perform.
Yeah, I think so. We really lucked out that we have two of our, yeah, I think, well, we've lucked out because two of our students are like, they love film, and two of our technical students, they really, they're into film and passionate about film editing and all that stuff. And so knowing I had the two of them, it kind of in my back pocket, made this a much easier experience. That I knew I could sort of turn to them and lean on their expertise for all the things I don't know about film. That I had two kids that, you know, they did theater, but films were really more their passion, and I was able to sort of lean on their experience, which was awesome, because we have a few pre-recorded bits in there in which we, you know, in order to be able to get more creative on Zoom, that we have a couple pre-recorded and pre-edited things that then get played live, and then we move into the live performance from there. But yeah, it's been, you know, the process, I think, can still be the same if you embrace the fact that it's not the same. If that makes any sense, right? If you try and shove traditional theater onto the computer, it's not going to work, right? If you say, this is where I am, and let me embrace what I actually have, then you can make it work. And that's why I think moment work really fits so perfectly into this, because that's what one of their mantras is. Let's look around and find the theatricality of everything around us, and how can ordinary everyday objects speak to us. And so we played with the camera, we played with, you know, your environments. And so let's not look at the fact that you're in the room as your room. Let's look at, we have 25 different stages now, and so what are each of you able to do on your own unique little stage? And I think it was really just allowing yourself to go, almost throw away everything you know about theater, and let's redefine the rules. And I think those people that embrace that are going to be the ones that not only will be successful now, but I think will grow as artists. And that's really what I wanted to be able to communicate to this class, not only for kids that want to go into theater, but no matter what they want to go into, that, you know, things are going to happen. And so, you know, you can't just, well, it's not what I expected, throw your hands up and quit. That if you're passionate about something, you can figure out how to make it happen.
What were some of the questions that you asked students that you wanted them to think about when putting together their pieces?
So what wound up happening is, so like I said, we made all these little moments, and then we looked together and we said, well, what are our common through lines? What are we seeing in these little individual moments? What are our common themes? And so we came up with sort of 8 essential questions that I think that we were attacking, and it kind of made a story. So we started with, you know, what was going on in your life before COVID started, and then when did you first hear about COVID, and what was your reaction, and then, you know, what were you feeling when things first began to get shut down? And then when you realized it was going to be longer, how did you deal with isolation? And then when you realized it was, or then what were you feeling like when things started to open back up and it didn't make sense for things to be open back up because cases were going up, and then, now that we're in it for the long haul, how has things changed? And then what's your immediate outlook for over the next couple of months, year, and what's your long-term outlook? Imagine yourself 10, 15 years from now, 15, 20 years from now, talking to someone who never lived through this. What would you tell them about it? And so those are the 8 questions that I really gave to them and let them kind of just bare their soul out. just talk about it.
Those are kind of cool questions for all of us to think about, though. I think that's a good exercise, theatrically or not. I think that's a pretty cool way to think about where we were 6, 7 months ago and where we are now, and looking forward where we're going to be a year or 2 or 15 from now. Any surprises that you guys have encountered during this process of devising this piece? Ethan, I'll start with you this time.
Ooh, any surprises? Going through the answering of the essential questions, the way that I think that I had dealt with sort of COVID and coping with it prior to the experience was, just kind of pushing it aside, as accepting it for what it was, and just hunkering down and hoping for the best. But going through this and answering the questions, actually going through and devising the play, looking at, how I can use the objects around me to tell a message and convey a message, I began to realize how much I was bottling up. Because COVID, it's a tough experience that everyone's had to face. And I was surprised by sort of these emotions that came out from somewhere. That's the whole thing, is that I don't really know where they came from or where I was keeping them, but I was surprised to see how much this opened me up to become more aware of what's going on.
Jessica, how about you? Any surprises during this process?
Actually, about the same as Ethan's. I mentioned this a little bit beforehand, but we started the interview process, and I was talking about my mental state as we were in COVID-19, and I was like, oh, I'm a little sad, but I'm not that angry. And then 5 minutes later, I'm calling all my classmates snot-nosed teenagers. I'm attacking the President of the United States. I am doing a Greta Thunberg impersonation, going, how dare you? I watched it back and I looked at my lines and I realized, actually, maybe I'm not okay. Maybe I'm very angry. Maybe, and that's why I think we did realize some part through it. It was like we were all just unpacking our collective trauma from this and making it art, which is beautiful and makes it interesting. But also you discover things about yourself you didn't really realize. And I think it was a process of us all going through this play, realizing these parts of ourselves and deciding how to cope with them, either by getting rid of them or by harnessing them. And that's something I'm still working on, and something that, surprises me to this day about this process.
I think in addition to this pandemic, you alluded to the president. We've had an election. We had a racial uprising. Our theaters on Broadway and internationally, many of them have closed. And that's trickled down, of course, locally. So there's a lot coming at us all. And I think many adults are having trouble keeping up emotionally with everything being thrown at us. We talk a lot about equity, diversity, inclusion, racism in the theater on this platform. I after the Parkland shooting, I was really moved with how young people really mobilized and became young activists. I felt like there was this uprising in young activism that I haven't seen in a really long time. And maybe it's because my kids were young and not there yet, but I'm really inspired by the activism I'm seeing. So could you speak to that? What are you seeing among your peers? I mean, are your peers concerned about these world issues, not just COVID, but about the election? How are your peers and you responding to all of the other stuff happening?
It's been interesting, to say the least, because it's all these problems that they've been happening. Like it's not a new thing, but it's with COVID and everyone's staying at home, everyone's bored, not doing anything, not going out, not keeping up with they're less focused on the short term and they're more focused on the long term, on the bigger picture, and they're beginning to realize, oh, this is happening and this is a problem and we need to say something about it. We need to at least have some conversation. We need to converse, we need to communicate about it. And I've noticed, especially over the past few months, really, I've heard a lot more of that kind of talk, a lot more of people becoming more aware of what's going on in the world around them and society in particular, where people are talking about it. And I think having this opportunity, weird to phrase COVID as an opportunity, but having it to really take a step back and view our world for what it is right now, it gives us an opportunity to find places for improvement and to act on that.
How about you, Jessica?
Absolutely. I mean, in the final monologue of the play that I do, it's not my words, it's the words of the amazing Anna Hofelt, but she's one of the technicians in our class. She talks about the idea of bread and circuses. If people are entertained, they won't question the status quo. Because quarantine has left us so bored, it was the perfect time for everything to culminate for the Black Lives Matter movement. And that truly is the silver lining of COVID-19. It has given us the chance to reevaluate where we are and decide to make some changes and decide how my generation wants to define themselves. And that's very exciting. I'm sad that we had to go through this in order to get to that point, but grateful because I think the future looks bright if we continue on this road.
I hope so. How about you, Pete? In the time that you've been teaching, have you seen a swelling up of young activism in your students, or?
Absolutely, 100%. Like I think about now, and like what's interesting about because of social media, and I help run the Sanderson Theater Ensemble Instagram, so I kind of I see people's things come up and how politically aware they are. I was like, I don't remember being that politically aware in high school. I don't remember thinking about any of that. And I think the fact that they are is awesome. And really this show is such a testament to that, because all I did was ask the questions and listen. And everything you hear in the show and all these big ideas and connections and about all this stuff came from them. And when I listened to their interviews, and I came in the next day, I listened to all their interviews over Labor Day weekend. I didn't even mean to do that. I just started and I just couldn't stop. And so I came back. I was like, my biggest takeaway is just how smart you guys all are. And I was just blown away by it, and I continue to be blown away by how much they were able to make and synthesize all these connections, and how they're able to process so succinctly what they're sort of living through right now. A lot of adults can.
Absolutely. And I think we were saying before we went on camera, I really think the young people are going to lead the charge and lead us out of this mess that we've created for ourselves. So I have some concerns because I have two young people in my house, and have done a lot of these interviews where other adults have expressed concerns about the long-term effects that this lockdown will have on our young people. Oh, Jessica, I feel like you're ready to jump into this one. So what are the long-term effects? I'll start with you, Jessica, that you think we'll see with this pandemic. I mean, obviously we're still in the middle of it, but what are some of the long-term effects that you maybe have some concerns about for young people navigating this?
Mainly, I do feel like, despite all of the good I think my generation has done, I do think that this has created the generational divide in America. I do believe has gotten worse, and I worry that we're going to carry that into the future, which is not productive and is not going to help anything. I also feel like we just in general are going to be very wary, be that in public, because we are so used to distancing ourselves and having to be so careful of social interaction. So I worry if that we're maybe like going to become even more introverted as a generation, because that was a concern with technology, with, oh, they're glued to their phones. I'm worried if maybe that becomes worse because we become so used to this and we become so used to being afraid of what is outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. But mainly the generational divide, I think, and this is ironic coming from me, I think we have to try and understand that everybody is just doing the best that they can with the limited amount of knowledge that they have. And we all have to just try to be there for each other and to educate each other. And that's all we can do.
How about you, Ethan?
In terms of long-term effects, I suppose there's going to be some, emotional, mental repercussions to all of this, especially among all these kids who, would have gone to school, would have, had more experience interacting and had that taken away. But I'm thinking positively. I'd say that the long-term effects of this are something to be hopeful about rather than something to be concerned about. I feel like people are going to be able to use this less as a sort of purgatory or a literal, like solitary isolation type deal, and more of a time to think, sort of a meditation period where they can think about the world, think about themselves, and become more aware of that. I feel like, everyone talks about when you get on the job, you're just always on that sort of treadmill until you get off at retirement. But having this long pandemic, it's given us a chance to take a break, to really sit back and think. And I feel like we don't think enough. And this is an opportunity to change that.
It definitely has given us a chance to slow down. I am going to run the website at the bottom so people can check it. I know, mind blown, right? We're so tech savvy here at RDU on Stage. If you want to get tickets to see the show is going to be Thursday and Friday this week. Yep. People can watch it virtually and log on to the website, scrolling at the bottom of your screen, get tickets, find out how to stream it. And while that's going, Pete, I want to ask you, what have you learned about yourself as a teacher, as a dad, as a husband, during
Weighing
this.
all the big questions on.
Yeah, just to bring it. And listen, the kids have been carrying the weight of this whole thing. So well,
Excuse me to play. I just said you tell me what's about.
So what have you learned?
There's been so many emotions. Like, I know there's been a couple times where I've been outside and watching my 4-year-old and my 8-year-old run around with masks, and I'm just like, what world have I brought my children into that they can't even like go outside and run around without a mask? Or that was so unnerving for me as a while. But I think what I have definitely learned is, like, I think I'm gonna be more, like, we have quite literally been invited into our student, or not invited, we are in our students' homes. Our students are in our homes. Like, I've seen more of my students' houses, they've seen more of mine than I think we ever, I think, really cared to. And there's something really kind of beautiful and intimate about that. The fact that, like, we are sort of really have to let each other in. We've gone through this together, and I think some students are going to feel very detached, and some teachers might feel very detached. But I'm feeling closer to this group of students than I think ever, because we've been through something so big together. And I think that when we come out of it, kind of understanding everybody more as a whole human being and less of just their role as an extra in your life. You know what I mean? And I think understanding everyone as this 3-dimensional character that is in your life, and sort of appreciating that and giving grace for that sort of thing, I think is really important. And that's something that I've learned, as well as just appreciating, because it's easy, especially I've been feeling so burnt out on theater and teaching. I go on ebbs and flows of theater and teaching, because in order for me to keep a job and food on the table for my family, I have to be directing, constantly teaching, constantly directing, constantly. It's just like, boy, would I like a break. And now I've gotten my break. I've gotten my fill of that break. I'm ready to go back, and get on a stage and create again. So I think it's given me time to have all that perspective. So.
Well, I'm really excited about this production. I did sadly miss 26 Pebbles. I will not miss this one. I don't want this to be one of those shows that everyone says, "Did you see it?" And I'm like, darn it, I missed this one. So I'll be watching. And just break legs. Good luck with NCTC with your submission. And I know SCTC will be virtual. It'll look a little different, but it'll still be exciting. So thank you, Jessica and Ethan, for being so open and just being so smart. Like I said, I think the kids are going to lead the way. So I'm feeling very optimistic at this point that our future is in good hands. And thank you, Pete, for joining me and
thank you so much for having us.
Making me aware of this really great project. I'm excited about it. So again, if you want to see it, it will stream this Thursday and Friday virtually at 7:00.
Yep. So we will. We'll have. We'll start and we do the show live. So we have a couple pre-recorded segments, but in general, you're going to see it live. The actors are going to be performing live, and then afterwards, we're going to have a little discussion and kind of give you a backstage peek into how we sort of created it, because we all found the process so engaging. So the show runs about 45-50 minutes, and then we'll do about a 15-minute kind of behind the curtain of how this thing was all put together.
I love it. Well, thank you all for being with me tonight, and come back on Thursday night. We will be talking, Tara Nicole Williams will be talking about the theatricality of gaming, which is something I know nothing about. So I'm excited she's going to be talking about it, and I don't have to, but I interviewed a theater critic a few months ago, and I said, "What's the most exciting theater that you've seen in this pandemic space?" And he said a lot of the theatricality of online games. He's very excited about. So I'm excited to hear that discussion. And then, like I said, Thursday night and Friday night, 7:00, you can watch this production, Bread and Circuses, and support the kids in Sanderson High School Theater Ensemble. So thanks, guys. Good luck at or break legs at NCTC, and have a great rest of your senior year. Thanks, Pete, and I will see you all again Thursday night.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.